Hello everyone, how are you today? Today we're going to be playing with some lamb. This time of year that we're filming, it's getting close to Easter, so it's very fitting that we would be showing you how to butcher lamb. Healthy butcher lamb is amazing. We have two types of lamb that we source, and it comes from a couple different types of lamb breeds. Our lamb is always hormone and antibiotic free, and it's always local, so local Ontario lamb. We do deal with a local antibiotic free lamb, and then we also bring in certified organic lamb, and in the summertime that lamb is 100% grass-fed. So this lamb here is hormone and antibiotic free. It's beautiful lamb. We like our lambs here at the Healthy Butcher to be a little bit bigger because we primarily sell our lambs into pieces. So what that means is we don't do much sale in whole lamb, but if you wanted a whole lamb, we do sell them that way. But we are just going to be demonstrating how we break these into its respective parts. So when we talk about lamb, first of all, this is a gorgeous lamb. Really, really nice structure, nice and firm. There's a good fat cap on it. And so this is something that I love to see when I'm dealing with lamb. The musculature is beautiful and the fat structure is really, really nice. So this means that this lamb was gaining weight, which is, and for a long time, which is a really, really good sign in terms of good quality lamb. I did say I like my lamb bigger, but we don't necessarily take these lambs to two-tooth or yearlings, so these are still under 9 months old, probably in that 6-month-old range, but they're about 50 pounds, so bigger in size. When I butcher this, I'm going to breaking this down into 4 basic sections. So I'm going to have my shoulder, my rib section, my loin section or my saddle, and then my legs. So, without further ado, we're going to get right into that. Okay, now I'm going to turn it onto its side. Because we are a butcher shop and we're a retail butcher shop, one of the things I love to see are these stamps that are here. These stamps just indicate to me what the processing plant was. This particular lamb, the beauty of it is that the processing plant is literally right across the street from the farm. So it does not take, these animals do not travel far to get to the plant that they're going to. Right inside the cavity is its pluck. And the pluck is just going to consist of the liver, the lungs, and the heart. I like to look at these and see the quality of them, because this will indicate what kind of quality of an animal I'm going to be getting, because like this, the liver would be a filter organ, and these are absolutely gorgeous looking offal, which anybody would be really, really happy to eat. Okay, the shoulder, generally I break the shoulder from the rib between the 4th and the 5th rib. And this I would normally reach inside and count it out. The rib section is broken from the loin between the 12th and the 13th rib. And then my loin will be taken off of the leg just behind the top sirloin. So if you look at the bum of the animal, this is also the top sirloin of the animal. So right where this comes down, that is where that top sirloin ends. Alright, so this is basically where that line will be. So I'm going to draw these out for you with my knife so you can see exactly where my cuts are going to be made. So at the bottom of this heel here, that's more or less where the top sirloin ends, or where the leg ends. And then to take off my shoulder, I'm going to be counting out 4 ribs. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is such a firm animal that you can't see my fingers poke through, which is a good sign. So that will be my line there to take off this shoulder. Now to remove, I'm going to have this kidney fat on the inside of the cavity. I'm just going to remove some of this kidney fat so we can all see a little bit better what I'm looking at inside. Alright, so looking at my rib cage here, so where to remove my ribs from my loin, I'm basically going to be counting out 8 ribs. But generally what I look for is this 13th rib really gets quite small, and I don't usually include it in my rack of lamb just because it'll be too short. So I want my last rib that is quite long part of my rack, but this one rib I usually make it part of my loin. The other indicator will be this tenderloin. So that tenderloin tends to end in around where that 13th rib is. So if you look, they tend to end, these two things are in around the exact same point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to poke my knife in between the vertebrae of the spine. And I'm just going to snap this vertebrae like so. I'm going to cut. And that is my rib section. Okay, next will be my saddle region. And this is called the saddle because this is where if you were to ride a lamb, you'd put the saddle right over top of this part of the lamb. That's my saddle. And this would be my leg section. So, legs, saddle, rib, shoulders. All right. So here we have our shoulder. With our shoulder, we're going to break it down into its respective parts. So I have my foreshanks, I have my neck, and then I'm going to get my 2 square cut shoulders. And out of the square cut shoulders, there's 2 popular items that are cut from them. You can either get shoulder chops or boneless shoulder roast. I also do stew and where I collect a lot of my trim. But for today, you don't need to see me produce stew and trim, but we're certainly going to produce some beautiful shoulder chops and a boneless shoulder roast. So without further ado, I'm going to get into this. And most of my cuts are going to be done on the bandsaw. So I'm going to draw with imaginary line with my knife, the cuts I'm going to be doing with my bandsaw. So my neck comes off just like that, just around the collar of the lamb. I will be splitting this straight down the middle. And then each side I'll be cutting off the brisket and the foreshank right there. Finish off these shanks. There's a beautiful foreshank. It's another beautiful foreshank. And that's your neck. This is what's called a square cut shoulder. Very popular in lots of parts of the world, as a roast like that. And you can, but we're going to turn this now into shoulder chops. Shoulder chops are bar none one of my favorite steaks out of the lamb, and simply because you get a great amount of meat to bone ratio, and so they're very, very tender. Because of the age of the lamb, shoulder chops are outstanding quality for the money. So to cut these steaks, I'm just going to be cutting. I'll be cutting 1 steak from this side, and then I'll be cutting more steaks from this side here. But I'm just going to cut you one so you can see what it looks like, and then we'll debone the other shoulder. This is a shoulder chop. It's an outstanding grilling steak. Really, really flavorful, very, very tender. You could do this on fairly high heat. You can do this in your smoker if you so choose. And this is outstanding bang for your buck when it comes to lamb. The next thing we're going to do is going to be a boneless shoulder roast. So I'm just going to show you how I would debone a shoulder whole. Okay, so now we have a fully deboned shoulder. This we can now tie into a boneless shoulder roast. And the beauty of or I can cut this into stew, but this is an outstanding roast for either slow roasting or braising or cutting into stew. And full of flavor, very, very, great meat quality. This is an outstanding roast on a lamb. This here is the lamb rib section. So, and we have 8 ribs in this lamb rib section. So what we're going to do now is we're going to break this up so we can produce French tracks of lamb or unfrench tracks of lamb, and then we're going to French them. Lamb breast, and that's that. Basically, my first cut will be to split the 2 rib sections, so right down the middle. Now my next cut will be to separate the breast from the rack. Now what I like to do is have nice, beautiful Frenched rib bones. So I'm going to try to make those rib bones all about the same size. So I'll be removing this rack somewhere, or the breast from the rack somewhere around there. So these are the equivalent of lamb side ribs, also known as lamb breast. This is an outstanding cut for roasting, dry roasting, or putting on your smoker. I like to cook these, you know, with some sort of Moroccan spice rub, and then I'll just put them on a bed of potatoes and just let them slow roast for about 2 hours, and they turn out absolutely sensational. All the fat renders out of it, and then the fat nicely kind of, you know, melds nicely with the potatoes that it's cooking with. It's absolutely glorious dinner. These are our rib sections. Personally, I prefer my lamb rib chops with all the meat on. However, most North Americans tend to like Frenched rack of lamb, so not a problem. That's what we're going to produce right now. Whatever meat hasn't come off, it just needs to be told to come off a little bit more. All right. And then finally, very last step will be to give it a finished French. So that's just where I glide my knife along each bone, and it's mostly just to remove the membrane of collagen that's connecting the elastin and the muscle to the bone. Okay, my last step will now be we're going to chine the spine section off of my rack of lamb so that each bone becomes exposed to cut. So this is the creme de la creme of lamb cuts. This is your French rack of lamb. As you can tell, there's 8 bones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Some customers come in after going to a butcher shop that'll sell them a 10 or 11 bone rack of lamb. Bottom line is there's only 13 rib bones in a lamb. So if you're going larger than 8, maybe pushing it to 9, that's normal. But when you're going up to 10 or 11, you're basically paying for shoulder chops. You're paying rack of lamb price for shoulder chops. But this cut is a great high heat cut. You can roast it on high heat. You can separate it into little chops. A lot of people refer to them as lamb lollipops. It presents beautifully and it eats even more beautifully. This is a lamb saddle. Like I've said in previous videos, the lamb saddle is called the lamb saddle because this is where I would actually put the saddle on the lamb if I were to ride a lamb like a horse. I'm going to flip it over so we can look at what muscles constitute our lamb saddle. So on the sides, on either side of the lamb saddle, these are referred to as the flanks. The flanks I primarily turn into trim, so I'll put these guys into lamb sausages or burgers. In the middle here, I have the lamb tenderloin, and on the other side of this T-bone, I have the lamb, I guess, strip loin or lamb loin. Now, there are many different ways that this whole thing is presented. A lot of times it's deboned and then tied back up as a roast, and that's referred to as a lamb saddle roast. Sometimes it's, depending on the size of the lamb, what they'll do is they'll do it in half portions. So they'll use just one tenderloin and one strip loin. That's known as a lamb noisette roast. But more traditionally, these are served as bone-in chops, and these are just lamb loin chops, and they look like little T-bone steaks, or you can cut them as double steaks. So we're going to prepare this saddle to cut it into those steaks. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these flanks. And then I'm going to cut so I can start to see where the spine is. A lot of times butchers, what they'll do is they will actually use the spine as their indicator for how thick they're going to cut each steak. Or they can set the fence on their bandsaw. But this is a very, very common practice for butchers to actually use a spine because vertebrae are perfectly, they're the exact same length dispersion between each steak, and it's just one of the crazy laws of nature. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those vertebrae to cut my steaks lengthwise. So these are lamb loin chops. These are an absolutely outstanding cut of lamb. Major difference between these and the French rack of lamb is that in the French rack of lamb you get the beautiful French bone for presentation, whereas with this one here you get that beautiful nugget of lamb tenderloin in it. But otherwise they both have this large, the main muscle is that lamb loin muscle. So depending on what kind of presentation you're looking to have, these are excellent quality cuts for the barbecue or your high heat roasting. Here we are with our leg of lamb. Leg of lamb, easily one of the most popular cuts from the lamb, and that's simply because you get outstanding meat to bone ratio. And we're going to see that when we break down this lamb. There's going to be two ways we're going to set it up. We're going to do a Frenched whole leg of lamb, and then we're going to debone one of the legs of lamb so we can get a boneless leg of lamb with a shank that we'll keep to the side, and then we'll turn that boneless leg of lamb into mini legs of lamb so you can see the mini leg roast that you can get out of it as well. The cuts that we're going to be making, first I'm going to split this leg straight down the middle, so I have two legs of lamb, and I'll be cutting off these bones from the ankles. For the French leg of lamb, I'll just be Frenching the top of one of these bones, and then with my boneless leg of lamb, I'll remove the shank and I'll remove the corresponding bones with it. So this is a whole French leg of lamb. My final steps here will be to remove the amount of fat that my customer would want to have removed from here, and then tie it up. This is a boneless leg of lamb. So the major difference here would be that I've removed the femur bone and the hip bone from it. At this point, we would either tie this up whole, or sometimes people want a smaller leg roast because they're only serving 2 or 3 or 4 people, so they can break this leg into its individual muscles. So in this case, this would be the inside round, the eye of round, and the outside round will be kept together, otherwise known as the gooseneck. This would be the sirloin tip. And finally, this is the top sirloin. This is an outstanding muscle. In North America, it isn't normally merchandised as a top sirloin, but just as a leg of lamb. But this one muscle can be treated as a steak as well. But this is your leg of lamb. So thanks for joining me here today talking about lamb. The Healthy Butcher is able to bring in lamb 52 weeks of the year. It is always fresh and always from Ontario. All of our lamb always is raised without the use of hormones and antibiotics, and it's a great way to add diversity into your diet. It's a great source of red meat. Lamb is always tender, it's always young, and it's just extremely flavorful. Just a beautiful meal. So hope you enjoyed yourself learning about lamb, and we see you in the store or on Real Food Toronto trying some of our lamb.